prepare partridge berry jalapeno drizzle. This recipe can also be used to make a jelly that can be used for serving with cheese or different types of meats. For today, we're making a drizzle that's going to be served with our Phyllo wrapped Brie and Caramelized onion. And so to get started, we'll go through some of the ingredients. We're going to need 2.5 cups of frozen partridge berries. We got 1 cup of water. We got some jalapenos, some green peppers, white vinegar, and 2.5 cups of white sugar. So before we get into making the dish, we're going to start by preparing some of these ingredients. We'll start with the jalapenos. It's really important when you're dealing with hot peppers that you use some gloves to make sure your hands are protected. The risk becomes if you get the jalapeno juice on your hands and then touch your face or rub your eye, it can really burn and do a lot of damage. So always try to wear gloves whenever you're going to be handling hot peppers. So for this recipe, when you take the peppers out, we're going to take the seeds out. The seeds add a whole other element of heat to the dish. So we don't want those in there. We're not going to want that hot. It's going to burn you really bad. So just slice the jalapenos in half, and then you can sort of just scoop out the seeds. And you want to get the white pith part out as well. So for this today, we've got some green jalapenos, as well as we have some red ones. Same thing, just make sure you get all the seeds out. Once all the seeds are out, then we're just going to chop these roughly. They don't have to be really finely chopped because they're going to be cooked in the sauce. So once we got them all chopped, we'll just reserve those for later to throw in the sauce as well. So now that we've got all that done, we're going to start with a clean board and a clean knife. You can take these gloves off. And we're going to move on. So with this recipe also calls for some green pepper. So a nice little trick for getting the seeds out of the green pepper, just cut the tops and the bottom off. And then once you open up the side, you can just run your knife right through here. So again, you're not going to use the seeds or any of the white parts on the inside. So this recipe calls for a 1/2 cup of chopped green peppers. And they just need to be coarsely chopped because, again, they're just going to be cooked in with the sauce and the berries and the jalapenos. So once we've got some of that stuff prepared, we can move on and start combining it all. So we're going to take a medium to large saucepan, depending on how much you're making. We're going to add our 2.5 cups of frozen partridge berries. It's important to use frozen because a lot more water will come out of them when they're frozen, and it'll help with the amount of sauce we're going to get. So we've got our hot peppers. They can go in. Remember, don't touch them. The green peppers. So we got 1 cup of water, 1/4 cup of white vinegar, and 2.5 cups of white sugar. So once you get all that in the pot, we're going to just give it a quick stir to combine it all, and then we're going to put it on the stove and bring it to a boil. Once you've got that to a boil, we're going to let it simmer for about 20 minutes. Today we are preparing a Phyllo wrapped brie with caramelized onions, which we are also going to top with our partridge berry jalapeno drizzle. So to do this recipe, we're going to need some red onions. We got some butter, some brown sugar, and some balsamic vinegar. So we'll start off by chopping up the red onions. So we're going to take the tops and the bottom off the red onions. And we chose the red onions because they're sweeter than regular onions. They have more flavor. So just peel off all the skin and any dry or wet, like bad pieces on the outside until you get to a nice piece of onion at the bottom. There you go. So we'll discard that. So we're going to use 2 onions for this. 2 nice big onions. So when we cut my onion, I'm going to cut right down through the core, the root, top of the onion. So when I trimmed it off, I left enough there so it's going to help hold the onion in place so I can do this part. Alright, so once we get that part, we're going to slice the onions. So now for this part, I'm going to remove the root part of the onion. And I'm going to cut this way and along the side so we get nice slices of onion, fairly thin. So once you get about 3/4 of the way through your onion, you're going to flip it on the side so you get some nice pieces like this as well. So they stay consistent all the way through. So again, we're going to cut out the root. We're going to get some nice consistent pieces. Sometimes you get in red onion, you get this large piece in the center. If you catch a piece of that, just give it a little cut like that to get rid of it. Remember, you want all your pieces to be roughly the same size so they all cook evenly. So it may seem like a lot of onion for what we're doing, but remember, when we caramelize these, we're going to reduce them and cook them very slowly. So they're actually going to be a lot less when we're done than what it looks like we've got starting here. So in a medium to low heat pan, we're going to put in a couple of tablespoons of butter and let that melt. Make sure you swirl it around so you get the butter all over your pan. So with the caramelizing of the onions, the butter is going to give it a nice flavor, and it's also going to help with that caramelizing process. So once it's melted, you're going to just throw in all your onions. So once they're in, you want to give them a toss around so they can all get coated in the butter. And once we do that, we're going to leave those now for about 12 to 15 minutes till they get nice and soft, and we'll come back to them and finish the caramelization after that. Okay, so we've taken our partridge berry jalapeno blend of things right off the stove. So they've just come off from their simmering stage. So you want to make sure that you do this when they're still fairly hot. We're going to pour this through some cheesecloth and a strainer into a fresh, clean pot. Okay, so make sure you get all of it. Okay, and then when you get it through, you're going to push some of that out so you get as much of the liquid as possible coming out. Okay, so once you got as much as you can get out, because you want to do this while it's still hot, then you're going to add 1 package of the liquid pectin to that as well. So remember when we started, we talked about making a drizzle versus a jelly. If you're making a jelly, you'd want this to be thicker and let it set, so you'd need 2 packs of the pectin for it to do that. But for the drizzle, which is going to be drizzled over the top of our dish, 1 is going to be enough. So when we're done, it sort of just looks like that. Make sure you stir it really well to get all the pectin in through it, so you don't get lumps as it sets. It'll lump up if it's not stirred through properly. And that's it. We're just going to leave that and let that cool, and we'll bring it back and put it on our brie and caramelized onion wrapped in phyllo. So once our drizzle is cooled slightly, but not completely cold, we're going to pour it into a squeeze bottle. That'll just make it easier when we go to drizzle it over the top of our dish. You can just squeeze it out then. So once we have this done, we'll put this back in the fridge and we'll allow it to finish cooling, and you'll get a nice consistency that's just like a jelly, only thinner. So after about 12 or 15 minutes, your onions should be this nice soft consistency like this, with that nice texture. So then we're going to add about a couple of tablespoons of brown sugar. Once we add the brown sugar, you're going to let that melt slightly. Give it another toss so you can get all the brown sugar mixed in with the onions. And once the brown sugar melts, which only takes a couple of seconds, we're going to add some balsamic vinegar. So at this point you can turn your heat up high enough because you want the balsamic vinegar to reduce. So reducing means to let it boil away until there's really nothing left. Okay? Once you've done that, you can turn it back a little bit again, but you want to have that so there's no balsamic vinegar left in the dish at all. You want your onions to have this nice dark caramelly color. So once you've done that, we're going to let those cool, and then we're going to add them to our phyllo. So now that our caramelized onions are ready, we'll be ready then to put inside the phyllo. So we just bought commercially prepared phyllo, comes this way, okay? And we have the brie that's going to go in the phyllo as well. So before we start, the brie on the outside has the wax that protects the brie and helps it when it's during its ripening. So before we use the brie, we're going to trim off, or scrape off actually, as much of this as we can. Although it is edible, it's always nicer not to have to eat the wax on the outside of the brie. So just scrape off, go around all sides and get as much off as you can. But you don't want to try to get too much because then you'll scrape away the actual brie. So you want to keep as much of the brie in as possible, but maximize the amount of wax you get off it as well. So once we've scraped off all the wax, then we're going to cut this into pieces. So the brie is quite creamy, so as you cut through it, you'll see that it's moving because of all the cream in it. Once you get it in that shape, we'll be ready then to put inside the phyllo. So again, with the phyllo, it's commercially prepared. It comes this way, wrapped, comes frozen, readily available in most grocery stores. It's very, very thin pastry. It's almost paper thin, you'll see. So as a result, because it's so thin, it also dries out very quickly. So to prevent it from drying out, we're going to store it between two pieces of damp cloth. So we're just going to lay it on damp cloth, and then we're going to cover it as well with another damp cloth. So I'm going to start with one sheet, and we're going to brush this sheet with some melted butter. So don't be shy with the butter. It'll help it bake and be nice and golden when it comes through. Then we're going to put a second sheet of phyllo directly on top of the first one. With the same thing, another brushing of butter. So once you've got the second sheet nicely brushed with butter, we're going to move on and add the third sheet of phyllo. Alright. So now that we've got the three sheets together, we're going to get ready to make these. So the phyllo is going to be rolled sort of like a spring roll or that type of look. So we want it wide enough that we can get some stuff in there, but not too wide that it's going to be all pastry or make them too large. So I want my phyllo to be in thirds. So the best way to measure thirds, I find, is just to fold them over and give them a little crease, because again, it's just like paper. It helps me judge better than just eyeballing the size. So then I can see where my lines are. And just with your knife, cut. So you're separating them so you have three equal sized pieces. Okay? Now if you like, you can make them smaller. This is a nice size for an appetizer. If you're doing hors d'oeuvres, you might want to make them a little smaller than this. Maybe put 4 on a sheet. So we're going to start off with a nice, let's say, that much red onion, the caramelized red onions, on each one. Okay, so then once you got that, we're going to go back to the brie that we did and lay a piece on that. And then we're going to roll them up. Start rolling and just roll. When you get about halfway, you want to tuck in the sides. That'll hold the cheese in. Before you get to the end, brush it with butter. That'll help the pastry stick together so it doesn't come out. And there, then you have a nice pastry. So again, roll till you get about halfway and fold over your edges. Nice brushing of butter. Hold it together, and there you go. So you're going to continue making these rolls like that until you've used up all your onions and all your brie. And then we're going to bake them in the oven at about 375 for about 15 minutes until they're nice and golden brown. Before you put them in, we're going to brush them with butter as well. That's going to help them give the golden finish on the outside. So now we'll crack them in the oven. Okay, so now that our phyllo is out of the oven, we're going to just plate it up. So we're going to use a little bit of some mixed greens, just to add a little bit of color and texture and dimension to the plate and to the dish. We're going to use 2 of our pastries, and then with our jalapeno drizzle, partridge berry jalapeno drizzle, just drizzle it lightly on top, and there you go. And so that is our phyllo wrapped brie with caramelized onions and partridge berry jalapeno drizzle. Like I mentioned in the beginning, instead of a drizzle, if you wanted to make a jelly, a great option to use for that would be a soft cheese like this goat cheese. Then the jelly is much thicker. It makes for a great topping on top of your cheese. And then as well, you can serve it with some nice toasted baguette that's just been lightly seasoned. So again, this is our partridge berry jalapeno jelly, served with goat cheese.